Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to cover two important questions about Rishi Sunak's Rwanda gambit. What is he saying his policy is now? And what does it mean for the timing of the general election? Because that election feels like it could be a bit closer now. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So Rishi Sunak has now dug himself into a hole so deep that it's come out the other end into la la land. Let us go over what he's essentially saying. So if we consider his statements at the press conference this morning, along with the bill that his government has presented to Parliament and what he told his MPs yesterday, this morning, Rishi Sunak said that he won't let foreign courts dictate UK legislation. Well, first of all, courts don't dictate UK legislation, or indeed any legislation. They just tell us what that legislation means, what the practical effect of it is, which isn't always what politicians who created it think it means. Also, there are times when legislation contradicts another piece of legislation. So we need the court, senior judges, to untangle things like that. It's a little bit like when some Northern Irish unionists claimed that the Northern Ireland Protocol was not entirely compatible with the 19th century Act of Union, so they went to the High Court in Belfast. Yes, said the High Court, you can just go ahead and assume that the Act of Union, which was passed over 2 centuries ago, has been amended by the legislation that was passed a few months ago. Another thing to point out repeatedly is that the European Court of Human Rights is not a foreign court. We are one of the countries who run it. We have representation on that court. It is not a foreign court. It is an international court of which we are a full member. Finally, the pre-existing Rwanda plan was not blocked by the European Court of Human Rights, but by the UK Supreme Court. Is Sunak trying to claim that that's a foreign court? It sits in walking distance from his own office. But then consider what Rishi Sunak told his own MPs in a meeting yesterday. He told them that he would have liked to have gone further with the bill, but he couldn't because the Rwandan government wouldn't allow it. Now, as I discussed this morning, there are some who think Sunak asked the Rwandan government to say that. But speculation aside, what is certainly the case is that Sunak has told his MPs that he is constrained by the views of the Rwandan government. So putting these two things together, Rishi Sunak has said that he will not allow a court to tell him what to do with UK legislation, which they're not doing anyway, but he will allow the Rwandan government to dictate UK legislation. I don't remember Brexiteers saying that in 2016, do you? We should ignore British judges, but we should do what a foreign government tells us to do. Also remember that the Rwanda plan allows the Rwandan government to reject any asylum seekers sent their way. Someone pointed out last night, I'm afraid I failed to know who it was. It was all a bit mad. But they said that this plan would create the ludicrous situation whereby people whose asylum claim is verified would have to stay in Rwanda against their will. But those whose application fails end up coming back to the UK. This is what happens when you keep trying to chase unicorns, when you pursue an unrealistic policy. Every time you are blocked by the wall of reality, you make dumber and dumber decisions until you end up in a truly mad situation. Neil Kinnock pointed something very similar out to his own Labour conference about 40 years ago. Another interesting feature of the press conference was that he will not make next week's vote a confidence issue after all. Now, making it a confidence vote would have meant that any Conservative MP who voted against it would lose the party whip. Now, being clear, Sunak is desperate to get this bill passed, at least by the House of Commons. Losing the vote on the infected blood scandal, that was not good for Sunak. Losing a very high profile vote next week, that'll be ruinous, because this will be on the front pages of the newspapers. Whatever the result is, it will make the front pages the following day. He is desperate for every vote. So why wouldn't he make it a confidence vote? There is only one plausible reason, because he thinks that there will be more Tory MPs voting against it, even if he does that, than he is prepared to remove the whip from. In other words, he's been told by his own party whips that the strong arm approach is not going to work. So he's backed down. This means that the bill is now more likely to be defeated than to pass. This is possibly why Rishi Sunak has decided to adopt a line from the Theresa May playbook. Back in 2019, May couldn't get her MPs to back her withdrawal agreement. She kept blaming Jeremy Corbyn for not telling his Labour MPs to back it. The reality, of course, was that she had the numbers to get it passed if her own MPs had backed her, if she had control over them. There were enough opposition MPs supporting it to clear the Commons if it weren't for the massive rebellion in her own party. Rishi Sunak is already attempting to blame Labour for the defeat before the vote has even been scheduled, let alone taken place. In the press conference, he said, well, the real question is, what are Labour going to do about it? No, Labour are going to vote against it. And Rishi Sunak is going to try to claim that the reason the boats can't be stopped is because Labour are blocking the move. They've got no plan of their own, even though they've published it. It'll be the fault of the party with 198 MPs in Parliament, not the fault of his own party with 350 MPs. Really is deja vu with the mad situation May found herself in when trying to appease the right of her party. In fact, I wonder if Sunak might not do exactly what Theresa May did. So 5 years ago, almost to the day, Theresa May pulled her withdrawal agreement vote. There was supposed to be a vote in December 2018. She cancelled the vote because she knew it was going to be defeated. That began the beginning of her end. Sunak and his government whips are going to spend the next few days drumming up support. Now, let us imagine a day or two before the vote is due, the whips have to report to Rishi Sunak that we're not even close on the numbers. Now, it may be that they are close on the numbers. It may be they get the numbers. But let's say they don't. Let's say they go, this is definitely going to be a defeated Prime Minister. What will Sunak do? Will he have the vote anyway and risk defeat? Or will he pull the vote in order to work on gathering more support, just as Theresa May did at the end of 2018? As for what this all means for the general election, there are lots of possibilities, really. But let's look at three possible outcomes. First, the bill passes the House of Commons, but is blocked in the Lords. Sunak has indicated he would then stick it in the manifesto and make the general election all about stop the boats. Now, if he does that, then actually he has no excuse for delaying the election into autumn. He may as well call it immediately afterwards. Given that Sunak is wanting to rush this bill through Parliament, he could easily string it out over the course of the next few months. But given that he's rushing it through, that would mean a general election probably in April or May. In fact, given that the right of the party may well try to bring him down the second it's defeated in the Lords, if they haven't already done so, it would make sense to announce the election immediately before they can get their act into gear. Second possibility is that the bill is passed by the House of Commons, but enough Tory rebels decide they've had enough anyway. They don't care. They don't like it. Let's say that enough letters go in to trigger a confidence vote. But the confidence vote fails, which is very likely because if Sunak gets the numbers to pass it through the Commons, it means that he has enough MPs who don't want him to fall, right? So Sunak limps on in a much weakened state. The polls have no chance of recovery because now Labour will keep pointing out that the Prime Minister doesn't have the support of a majority of MPs in Parliament. He may have won his own confidence vote, but not with enough MPs to command a majority of Parliament. With another damaging by-election in Wellingborough looming, probably in February, Sunak is forced to call the election for May or June anyway, because it's either that or risk the tap on the shoulder treatment. The third possibility is that the bill fails to pass through the Commons. Now, you would think this would definitely mean that the letters go in. So it's very difficult to imagine how this wouldn't result in a confidence vote, possibly even before the Christmas recess. Now, let us say Sunak loses that, or he gets so few votes that even if he technically wins it, it's like 50 odd %, and he has to resign. And then another leadership contest ensues. This would almost certainly force the election to be put back until the autumn or maybe later. The new leader would not be selected for a few months, you would think. Maybe February, maybe March. And they would want to give themselves a good 6 months to raise their profile with the public, present their agenda, but not so long that they exceed their honeymoon period. So then you might be talking September, October time for the election. There are other possibilities, of course, but ultimately this is all down to what Tory MPs think is the best way to proceed. It's entirely their choice. They can choose to back Sunak and unite, as he's urged them to do yesterday. That would actually be the best thing for the party. They could choose to force him to call an election sooner rather than later to avoid their loonier colleagues potentially taking over. They could choose to bring him down and spin the wheel of crap leaders again. What happens is going to be entirely the result of how many Tory MPs have each of those three views. But all of those scenarios I think are possible. The next week's going to be very interesting. This does feel like 5 years ago, only this time Labour are ready for it. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.